Well, and this is a place where a lot of y'all ought to be able to jump in. Gentrification is where a neighborhood changes, and it changes in some good ways sometimes. An older neighborhood may have had some crime problems, may have had some other things, some issues of livability, but still is moderate to medium priced housing. Suddenly people come in, start buying the houses, raising the housing prices. The housing prices go up as a result. I mean, it's a natural part of development in some ways, but gentrification is when it happens so radically that at least that's my opinion, where people are not able, folks who live there can't afford their houses anymore, can't even afford the property tax. I lived in Washington, D.C. for a long time, and that happened overnight in like Southeast and some other areas, and I mean, there were some rough neighborhoods, and all of a sudden, the housing prices went from $50,000 to $70,000 up to just a couple $100,000, $300,000, $400,000. People who lived there all their life couldn't afford to stay in those houses, and it's often communities of color, but also just, I mean, if you're a family starting out, you're not even able to be in there, and we deal with that in Chattanooga. Some of the really neat stuff that's happening around here, and people that are involved on some of this stuff, they're aware of it. I mean, the redevelopment of the South Side, that's great, but it's also, you know, that's not a place that a lot of folks can suddenly begin to move in, and is now the question Dr. Radill will talk more about that this evening, but it's justice issues. You know, what do you have a right to? Where do you have a right to live? You know, everybody's got a right to decent housing, and you know, how do we, as we redevelop Chattanooga, as parts of Chattanooga get developed, do we take into account everybody that lives in those neighborhoods already? I don't think we do. So,
well,
yeah, I think we should. Yeah.
The single biggest problem is gentrification, that it squeezes out low rental housing, which I can speak from personal experience because I rebuilt a house in Highland Park, and more people start looking like me in the neighborhood. Much lower minorities, Hispanics are being squeezed out because even though yes, they were renting from slumlords, the fact of the matter is it was typically affordable housing, and all of a sudden the landlords say, well, heck, if he sells his house for $200,000, I want $200,000 too, and all that low-income rental is gone. I enjoy the neighborhood; it's safer and all, you know, but where do those people go?
And if your housing, if the worth of your house goes up by so much, your property taxes can be way higher, and if you can't afford your property taxes, you can actually lose your home, and maybe you've lived in it for generations. You know?
And you have some areas like Georgia has a homestead exemption. Occasionally, they did at one point for seniors and other folks. But that's tough if Social Security is what you're paying your house payment on or your rental payment on, and suddenly, you know, that's not going up with a cost of living, but your property prices are and your rental prices are. Paul makes a good point too, because if you look at the Hispanic community, that's who I do a lot of work with. When they first came in 10 years ago, we were working with predominantly single men who were able to live, in sometimes incredible numbers to a home, and sometimes that was because folks wanted to. Other times it was just because it was a lot cheaper to do it that way. They lived primarily at that point in Highland Park, in different parts of downtown, in the South Side, Jefferson Heights. One of the reasons that Highland Park Commons has started over in Highland Park now, which is a soccer complex, was because Jefferson Heights, folks didn't want a soccer field at that particular point 8 or 7 years ago, and they said put it up in, you know, somewhere, because our community is starting to, our house prices are increasing. You know, we don't want to have, and you know, I understood a little bit of that. I mean, there's, you know, but now the Hispanic community, if you say where's the entry-level housing for Hispanic, for the Hispanic community here, it becomes Eastlake, it becomes Rossville, Georgia. The state line really doesn't stand in the way, and to some extent East Ridge. Cities go through that, but I mean the thing is, and part of the purpose of this is not to say, oh, this is terrible and we've got to stop it right now. Some of it is, but it's to say at least be aware of it. We do our public policy unaware a lot of times, or we just say, you know, that's the way it is, that's the free market, you know, c'est la vie, you know, and that's government. Well, anyway, that's getting off the tour, but government has a role. Yeah, but government definitely has a role in, or to make the free market at least a little better, and not just to, and also part of what we're looking at too, we're going to look at issues today, or we're looking at issues today of zoning. Where do kids go to school? Where do you live? Where, you know, so I mean, what do you want your city to look like in terms of diversity?